It begins with something so small that most people ignore it. A woman in a quiet kitchen accidentally touches the edge of a hot stove. She pulls her hand back out of instinct, but something is missing. The pain never comes. She looks at her fingers, expecting the familiar burning sensation. There is redness, there is heat, but there is no suffering. At first, she assumes it's just a delay. The body sometimes reacts slowly. She waits. Seconds pass, then minutes. Nothing. Across the world, millions of people are having the same moment. A man cuts his finger while opening a box. He watches a thin line of blood appear on his skin, but there is no sharp sting. A child falls while running and scrapes their knee. They look at it. They stand up and keep going. No tears. No fear. Within hours, something becomes clear. Pain is gone. Not reduced. Not weakened. Completely gone. The human body still senses touch, pressure, temperature, but the signal that once turned damage into pain has disappeared. The world reacts in waves. First, confusion, then disbelief, then something unexpected, relief, because pain has always been one of the most feared parts of being human. Injury, illness, suffering. For the first time in history, people experience life without it. Hospitals fill with patients, but not because they are suffering, because they are confused. Doctors examine injuries that should cause unbearable pain. Broken bones, burns, deep cuts, and yet patients remain calm. They describe what they see, but not what they feel, because there is nothing to feel. At first, it feels like an evolution, a step forward. A world without pain sounds like a better world. Athletes begin testing their limits immediately. Without pain, the body feels stronger. They run longer, lift heavier, push harder, because nothing tells them to stop. In everyday life, fear begins to fade. People touch things they once avoided. Hot surfaces, sharp objects, rough environments, because the immediate consequence is gone. Pain was always the first warning, and now that warning has disappeared. But something subtle begins happening almost immediately. People start making small mistakes. A person continues holding something too hot for too long, not because they want to, because nothing tells them to let go. A worker cuts themselves and does not notice until they see blood. A child plays too roughly and injures themselves without realizing it. At first, these seem like minor incidents, but they begin increasing because pain was automatic. Instant. Impossible to ignore. Without it, awareness becomes delayed, and delay creates damage. Doctors are the first to understand the danger. Pain was never just suffering. It was information. It told the body when something was wrong. Without it, the body cannot protect itself properly. Hospitals begin seeing something unusual. Patients arrive with more severe injuries than before, not because accidents are more frequent, but because they go unnoticed longer. A person walks on a fractured foot for hours. Another continues using a burned hand. Injuries that once forced immediate attention now develop silently. Meanwhile, something else begins changing. Illness. Pain often signals disease, internal problems, infections, conditions that begin quietly but reveal themselves through discomfort. Now those signals are gone. A person may feel completely fine while something dangerous develops inside them. By the time it is discovered, it is already serious. The medical world begins shifting rapidly. Doctors rely more on scans, tests, and observation, because patients can no longer describe pain. Only symptoms they can see. And sometimes, by the time something is visible, it is too late. At the same time, behavior begins evolving. People take more risks, because pain once created fear. Touching fire hurt. Falling caused suffering. Failure carried consequences. Now those experiences feel different, less intense, less immediate. And without that intensity, caution begins fading. Children are the most affected. They learn through experience. But without pain, learning changes. A child who touches something dangerous does not feel the consequence the same way. They see the result, but they do not feel it. And without feeling, the lesson is weaker. Parents struggle to teach safety because warnings lose power. You'll hurt yourself no longer means what it used to. Meanwhile, scientists begin asking a deeper question. Why did pain exist? For so long, humanity tried to reduce it, to eliminate it, to create a world where suffering was minimized. But now that it is gone, its purpose becomes clear. Pain was not an error. It was a system, a signal, a guide. And without it, something essential is missing. At first, the world feels easier, quieter, less intense. But beneath that calm, something dangerous begins building. Because the body is still vulnerable. Damage still happens. Injury still exists. But the warning is gone. And as the first day comes to an end, a strange silence spreads across the world. No screams, no reactions, no visible suffering. Only people moving through life as if nothing can hurt them. And in that silence, a realization begins forming. The absence of pain does not mean the absence of danger. It means the absence of awareness. And without awareness, survival becomes uncertain. Because when nothing hurts, everything can still break. At first, people try to convince themselves it will be fine. They tell each other that humanity will adapt, just like it always has. That technology will replace what was lost. That awareness can take the place of instinct. But within days, reality proves otherwise. Because pain was never something you had to remember. It was something you could not ignore. Now everything must be remembered. Every movement, every action, every risk. And humans are not built to live like that. Hospitals become the center of this new reality. Not because more people are getting hurt, but because they are arriving too late. Doctors begin seeing injuries that should have been treated hours earlier. Burns that have spread deeper into the skin. Fractures that have worsened from continued use. Internal damage that has gone unnoticed until the body begins shutting down. Patients sit calmly while their bodies are in serious condition. Because they do not feel the urgency. They do not feel the danger. They only see it when it becomes visible. And by then, it is often too late. Medicine changes rapidly. New systems are introduced. People are told to check their bodies constantly. Look at your skin. Check your movement. Monitor your temperature. Devices appear almost overnight. Wearable technology that tracks strain, heat, pressure. If something crosses a dangerous limit, an alert sounds. A vibration, a warning light, something to replace what pain once did naturally. But even with technology, something is missing. Instinct. Because pain was not just a signal. Created reaction. You did not think before pulling your hand away from fire. You moved instantly. Now reaction becomes delayed. Person sees danger, processes it, then acts. And that delay is enough to cause harm. Meanwhile, something else begins changing in human behavior. People start testing their limits. First carefully, then more aggressively. Because without pain, limits are invisible. Athletes push their bodies further than ever before. They train without stopping, without feeling exhaustion in the same way, without feeling injury in the same way. Records are broken. Performance increases, but so does damage. Because the body still has limits, even if the mind cannot feel them. In factories, construction sites, and physical jobs, accidents rise sharply. Workers do not notice small injuries. They continue working. Mistakes compound. Because without pain, there is no immediate correction. The world becomes more efficient and more dangerous. At the same time, something unexpected begins happening inside the human mind. Emotions begin shifting, subtly, quietly, but noticeably, because pain was never only physical. It was connected to emotional experience. Loss hurt, failure hurt, rejection hurt. Now those feelings still exist, but they feel different, less sharp, less overwhelming. A breakup still happens, but the emotional weight is lighter. Grief still exists, but it feels distant, muted. For some, this feels like relief, a world with less suffering, less heartbreak, less emotional pain. But over time, something else appears. Emotional depth begins fading, because pain gave contrast. It made joy stronger. It made love more intense. It made moments matter. Without pain, everything becomes more neutral. Happiness is still there, but it feels flatter, less powerful, because the extremes are gone. Relationships begin changing. Arguments lose intensity, but so do reconciliations. Apologies feel less meaningful, because nothing truly hurts. And without hurt, forgiveness becomes automatic, but also less valuable. Love continues to exist, but it changes. It becomes calmer, less urgent, because the fear of losing it no longer feels the same. And without that fear, attachment weakens. Meanwhile, society begins adjusting in ways no one expected. Danger becomes harder to define. Before, danger was felt. Now it must be understood. People rely on knowledge instead of instinct. Education becomes more important. Understanding risk becomes essential. Children are taught not what hurts, but what harms, because those are no longer the same thing. And that difference changes everything. A child can touch fire and feel nothing, but still be damaged. So they must learn through explanation, through observation, through trust, not through experience. And that makes learning slower, more fragile, because experience without feeling does not leave the same mark. Meanwhile, in more extreme environments, the consequences become severe. In war, soldiers continue fighting despite injuries. They do not feel pain, but their bodies fail just the same. Without pain, they do not retreat. They do not stop. And that makes conflict more destructive, because pain once forced limits. Now those limits are gone. In everyday life, something else begins disappearing. Caution, because caution was built on memory of pain. Now that memory feels incomplete. People remember events, but not the sensation. And without sensation, the lesson weakens. Humanity begins drifting toward a strange new state. More capable, but less aware. More free, but less protected. And as months pass, a realization begins spreading quietly across the world. Pain was never the enemy. It was a guide, a boundary, a voice that said, "Stop." Without it, humans can go further than ever before. But they also go too far, because nothing tells them when to stop. And in this new world, survival no longer depends on avoiding what hurts. It depends on understanding what destroys, even when it feels like nothing at all.